All right. Yeah, then.
Sorry for the technical delay. नमस्कार, गुड आफ्टरनून, जय हिंद। मैं डॉक्टर रश्मि शर्मा आज के कार्यक्रम में आपकी सारथी रहूंगी। Today is an important day for Team AWSAR, who has been working hard towards the compilation of the book AWSAR awarded Popular Science Stories by Scientists for the People. The book is a compilation of 141 awarded articles selected during the National AWSAR competition for the year 2019-20. These stories were selected by the panel of experts involving science communicators, journalists, and technical experts. On the occasion of this book release, followed by a panel discussion on the topic of opportunities in science communication, I would like to welcome Professor Ashutosh Sharma, Secretary DST, who has conceived and conceptualized AWSAR program. I welcome all the panelists of the discussion, Dr. Diksha Gupta, Dr. Mike Pandey, Professor Dinesh Kumar, and Shri Rajiv Kumar Shukla ji. I would also like to welcome our mentors, Dr. Manoj Kumar Pateria, Head NCSTSC DST, and Dr. Nakul Parashar, Director Vigyan Prasar. My heartfelt welcome to all the participants and viewers of the program. इससे पहले कि हम बुक रिलीज सेरेमनी की ओर बढ़ें, मैं अवसर का बैकग्राउंड बताना चाहूंगी। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं कि किसी भी समाज और देश के विकास में विज्ञान एवं प्रौद्योगिकी का महत्वपूर्ण योगदान है। इसके कारण वैज्ञानिक शोध का जनमानस तक पहुंचना आवश्यक ही नहीं, अनिवार्य है। पिछले कुछ वर्षों में वैज्ञानिक चर्चा एवं परिचर्चा में यह बात निकल कर आई कि भारतीय शोध संस्थानों में हो रहा शोध जनमानस तक नहीं पहुंच पाता और शोध संस्थानों की चार दीवारों तक ही सीमित रह जाता है। इसके लिए विज्ञान संचारण के वातावरण को मजबूत और सशक्त करने की आवश्यकता है तथा युवा शक्ति का उपयोग करते हुए हमें विज्ञान को जन जन तक पहुंचाना है। प्रोफेसर आशुतोष शर्मा, जो स्वयं एक विख्यात शोधकर्ता हैं और सचिव विज्ञान एवं प्रौद्योगिकी भी हैं, उन्होंने विज्ञान संचारण के इस पहलू को समझा और इस दिशा में नई ऊर्जा को प्रवाहित किया। इस सोच से जन्म हुआ अवसर कार्यक्रम का। अवसर डीएसटी का एक सक्सेसफुल प्रोग्राम है जिसमें कि पिछले 2 वर्षों में 2018 से अभी तक 5000 तक स्कॉलर्स जो कि पीएचडी कैटेगरी और पोस्ट डॉक्टरल कैटेगरी में उन्होंने स्टोरी सबमिशन किया और हमने लगभग 5000 स्कॉलर्स को की कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग की इन पॉपुलर साइंस कम्युनिकेशन इन लास्ट 2 years. In the end, I would like to congratulate all the AWSAR awardees and all the participants in last 2 years who have not received the award for their attempt with a quote from Dr. Kalam. If you fail, never give up, because fail means first attempt in learning. So thank you all. Now I would request Secretary DST to launch the book, AWSAR awarded Popular Science Stories by the scientists for the people.
See? You see the logo? AWSAR, it's right here on DST mug. So it indeed takes big prominence because it is an important program. Let us launch the book from while we are talking about communication, this particular platform we are using is not really the best. You can either show the book or your face, but you cannot have both of them together. So, well, of course, book is more important than the face, I agree. But it's rather, next time you do it on some other platform, I think. I mean, do you feel the same? I mean, I feel that this, you just cannot move yourself or your face would go out of the block, the little thing in which we are constrained. Ah, that's better. Yeah, okay. Now we can't go too vertical, but I think this is much better. Okay.
I think.
So no harm in showing the book again, right? It's a great book. And it can also be so thick, it can be used also in your gym for weightlifting. It's a joke. It's not a reflection on the quality of the book, which is super.
So now I would request Secretary DST to give the keynote address.
Oh, thank you. And indeed, this is a very important topic, a very important theme that we are discussing together. And you have a very compelling panel of people who fully know their business in science communication at different levels. So I see here Dr. Diksha Gupta, Dr. Mike Pandey, is he there? Professor Dinesh Kumar, Shri Rajiv Kumar Shukla ji, Dr. Manoj Kumar Pateria, and all the friends who have joined us. Rashmi has done a great work. Vigyan Prasad done great work. So Vigyan Prasad has been engaged from the beginning in implementing AWSAR scheme. I will just very quickly tell you the genesis of AWSAR. Of course, we had not thought about the acronym back then, but for nearly 3, 4 years ago, we have realized the importance of science communication to people, to society at large. And we would often discuss this. And then there was a kind of little workshop of science journalists that was organized. And then, so I looked at the numbers. I said, oh, there are about 20 people in the country who do science journalism. And so we are talking about all the time about having more stories, inspiring people, inspiring our youth, letting society understand the value of science and technology. Those are all the dreams that we have. But if you look at number of stories coming out from Indian science, they are so far and few in between. Even those science stories we read in the press, half of them would come from somewhere else, from abroad. So that doesn't do very much for Atmanirbhar Bharat. So Atmanirbhar Bharat is not only about manufacturing. It's about everything that happens in the knowledge chain, in the knowledge ecosystem. It may start from education, R&D. Of course, there is the design, prototyping, human resources, infrastructure, innovation, startups, industry, market, society. All of these are being part of our Atmanirbhar Bharat. So if we cannot inspire our society, our young, then we are doing good science. I mean, there's no doubt about it. There are so many stories waiting to be told. So that's one aspect of having something like this. The second aspect was that the writing skills of our PhD students and postdocs, they need to be enhanced. Clearly, if you write a popular science story based on your own area of research, then you understand that area of research much better than before. Because PhD postdoc, they are usually very deep but narrow, which means that we are not able to connect it with the larger concerns of science society, even larger concerns of science in that particular area. Right, so connecting it with something which is not as narrow is one of the things that is very desirable. So when you look at these two aspects, that PhD students, postdocs would benefit by writing a popular science story to be able to explain to any person with no background in science, to excite any person with no background in science. So that's one need. On the other hand, the need of the society to learn about science happening in India. If you look at these two needs and try to marry them, and throw in the fact that there are very few really science journalists in the country, so it's fairly clear as to what the solution is. If we cannot create more science journalists, we should create more scientists who have interest in journalism. So this was the basic idea behind having a program of this kind. We are all delighted as stakeholders of this program here that it has grown very rapidly. It's been only 2 years or two rounds of AWSAR submissions, and I understand that there were, I don't know, few how many entries were there, but very very large number. I was thinking about Manak programs. I was thinking lakhs, but no, no, not really. Well, okay, 5,000, 3,000 entries of this kind is really huge. I mean, it has a huge impact not only on the people who read the stories, but also the people who write the stories. So basically, it is doing two things in one go. And a dedicated web portal now exists, AWSAR-DST.in, wherein stories can be submitted online. I understand that there are 5.6 lakh visitors, which reflects the enthusiasm of people for this activity. I have to say that anytime I talk to anybody about this, they were nothing but positive. That happens very rarely because people don't get the idea right away. I mean, when you just describe in 5 sentences and then they are on board. So I think that there is a good, positive vibes for this program. and I think we need to leverage it further to be able to encourage more people, so to increase quantity, but at the same time pay attention to quality. So now that we are able to get these many submissions, it is fairly clear that one of the major objectives of this program ought to be that hundreds of these stories should find an outlet in print media, in electronic media, in whatever media, in whatever form, so that stories are able to reach larger number of people. So I think we still have to work on that particular objective of the program, and that requires that we work to enhance the quality together with the content of these stories. So obviously, if you just take a raw PhD student, a postdoc, he would not have an average student would not have much clue about how to write these stories. So therefore, we have to create resources for them. We must have workshops for them where the best of popular science writers interact with them, give them some tips, point some of the best popular science stories, as links, so that people can read those stories and understand what are the elements of writing a good popular science story. So we ought to be able to, convey all of that very effectively. How do we train people? I have suggested now that starting this year, we usually award 100 top stories. So we should first select maybe 300 or 400 stories, which is still 1 in 10 story being selected. So it's a very stringent selection process. After that, we give them some training, some mentorship, some awareness creation, and ask them to revise the story. So now, you see, when they are writing the first draft for submission, they are not sure how much time they should spend on it, whether this would make the final cut or not. Once they are in the top 300, 400, they know that the odds of this story making the final cut have become much higher. So they would be willing to spend more time refining it, revising it, based on, also some awareness generation that we should do. So the whole idea now we should focus on, I'm just, I know I'm repeating it too many times. Our focus now ought to shift to enhancing the quality of this reporting, of these stories, and by making people aware of what are the elements of writing a good popular science story. How is it going to appeal to people? So in that, I think, and of course, I understand that now these top awarded stories are being translated in Tamil, Bangla, and Hindi, which is indeed should be done, so that again they are able to reach larger number of people and inspire them. Um, and so if we focus on quantity, seems to be doing all right now, and when the COVID-19 times, I would have to hope that larger number of people have more time in their hands, and then they would write more number of stories. So if we can bring in more um, elements of some kind of, teaching these people, and then enhancing the quality, and giving another chance for enhancing the quality, right, and then finally seeing that some of these things are not only published by DST, but somehow they should find their own equilibrium. So how do we actually push these stories into popular media is another thing that we need to discuss. So if some of these things could be discussed by the panel, and also indeed beyond the panel, there would be a good value addition with concrete actionable items that the AWSAR scheme should do, how they should do it, and so on. That would be really, really helpful for adding more strength, more purpose, more muscle, more visibility to this scheme, which in concept looks already quite tremendous, quite good. So I understand webinars and being organized and so on. Whenever we organize any kind of camp or webinar for people to benefit from it, it's always necessary to have a little feedback at the end of it. In fact, what people should do is I mean, before and after. So all these people who have submitted stories after a particular training session, now you ask them to work on that story again, and then compare, what is before and after, and we ought to be able to tell the effectiveness of these training programs. So these are some few thoughts I have, not very much, just to kind of conclude and to summarize, to say it's a good program. It's been going on well. So if we were to say point number one, point number two, it's been going on well. Point number three, it has attained the quantity. Of course, some more could happen, and that will happen with time. Number four, that we need to provide greater amount of training, mentorship, awareness to people. Number five, so they can improve. They have another shot at improving their stories. And the final point, how do we get it to more number of people, and how do we get them permeate into media? Thank you very much for being with us and about thinking about strengthening this program with all your help. Thank you. Have a good day. I have to actually go for another meeting outside the my office across the town, different part of town. So I would be leaving in another 5 minutes or so. So I may be excused. Please let me know what the deliberations throw up.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for your enlightening and encouraging address. Very rightly said that if you cannot create enough science journalists, we should create more scientists with inclination towards journalism. Thank you once. Thank you, sir. मेरा ये मानना है कि ये जो अवसर प्रोग्राम है वो आने वाले सालों में विज्ञान संचारण में एक स्तंभ साबित होगा। तो इसको प्रोग्राम को आगे ले जाते हुए हम जो है अपने पैनल डिस्कशन की ओर बढ़ेंगे और जिसका टाइटल है अपॉर्चुनिटीज इन साइंस कम्युनिकेशन। तो आज के हमारे जो पैनलिस्ट हैं वो हैं डॉक्टर दीक्षा गुप्ता। आई वेलकम डॉक्टर दीक्षा गुप्ता। Dr. Diksha Gupta has completed her doctorate degree from IIT Delhi in 2012. She moved to City University of New York for her postdoctoral research. Then she switched her career from bench research to scientific publication and joined the Royal Society of Chemistry in London. In 2016, she joined American Chemical Society, and now she's working as an associate director, India, and handling scientific collaborations, scientific outreach programs for Indian scientific community. Welcome, Diksha. Then our next panelist is Dr. Mike Pandey. Mike Pandey is a renowned filmmaker, environmentalist, conservationist, and 3 times Green Oscar winner. He's working extensively for more than 35 years to protect wildlife in India. For him, filmmaking is a tool to spread awareness about wildlife and environment. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you.
Our next panelist is Professor Dinesh Kumar. Professor Dinesh Kumar is a former professor and head of the department Botany, University of Lucknow. He was Director, Institute of Mass Communication in Science and Technology, University of Lucknow. He also served as a Director, Information, Publication and Public Relation in University of Lucknow. He's a well-known science communicator and involved in various science communication programs at national and international level. Welcome, sir. Our next panelist is Rajiv Kumar Shukla. Rajiv Kumar Shukla is a former Additional Director General Program, All India Radio. He has also served All India Radio in various capacities as Program Executive, Assistant Station Director, and various All India radio stations. He has worked in All India Radio broadcaster at Hindi service of Voice of America at Washington, D.C. during 2002 and 2004. He worked with UNICEF, UNESCO, and many other national and international organizations for the cost such as disaster management, health, women and child welfare, etc., devoted to public service broadcasting. Welcome, sir. And our moderator for this panel discussion is Dr. Manoj Kumar Pateria. Dr. Manoj Kumar Pateria is advisor and head National Council for Science, Technology, Communication, DST, He's a well-accomplished scientist and science communicator and trained in multidisciplinary perspectives of science, technology, innovation, and humanities. He has also served as a director of CSIR, National Institute of Science Communication and Information Resources, New Delhi, and Additional Director General, Prasar Bharati. Dr. Pateria is decorated with many prestigious national and international awards, including Global Science Popularization Award by Center for Global Studies, Houston, USA, Indira Gandhi National Award by Ministry of Home Affairs. Welcome, sir. Now over to Dr. Pateria.
Thank you, Rashmi, and most respected Professor Ashutosh Sharma ji, Secretary DST, all the panelists, especially Professor Dinesh Kumar ji, former Director, Institute of Mass Communication in Science and Technology, the renowned filmmaker, Dr. Mike Pandey ji, my colleague and friend and the world broadcaster, Shri Rajiv Shukla ji, panelists from American Chemical Society, Dr. Diksha Gupta ji, my colleague from Vigyan Prasar, Dr. Nakul Parashar ji, all AWSAR team, and all distinguished dignitaries, panelists, and dear participants. It's my privilege and pleasure to be part of this program. And we are really thankful to Honorable Secretary DST, who has shared his vision, which is always enlightening for all of us for moving the objectives of AWSAR and science communication in general forward. And I would like to take this opportunity to really thank all of you and share some of my astray thoughts on science communication and how we may go about it further. Science is fascinating, mainly, but many people in the world, they feel that science is hard, science is difficult, science is so boring. But whosoever has come to the fold of science, he or she can really find exploring science is really fascinating. And so is science communication, because science communication is a tool for peeping into the science and taking the excitement of science and connecting it to the grassroots, to the people, to the students, to children, or all cross sections of the society. So in that way, science communication is really very, very important. And as Dr. Ashutosh Sharma ji has said, that science is being done in laboratories, but this science is not reaching to the people at large. And for which I think there are two players in that. One is the scientists, who are the creators of the knowledge and the custodian of the knowledge. At the same time, the other set of this system is the journalist, the science journalist. So one is the creator, one is the carrier. So both of them have to come together. So how about in one person, if we can have all these two attributes, science as well as communication? So with that perspective, I think AWSAR offers a great opportunity, especially for the young scholars, doctoral researchers, postdoctoral researchers, to come forward and join the excitement of science as well as science communication, and for which AWSAR program really offers a wonderful platform. And I'm happy to see that number is increasing. And now, as has been suggested, that we are looking for more people to joining this campaign. As far as the opportunities in science communication is concerned, I think one can consider from different different perspectives. One for the career perspective, other as a hobby, because it could be a hobby for many scientists, scholars, even though those who have studied science, but they are not really working in the area of science and technology. We have seen number of science writers, number of science communicators who have a science qualification, but they are working in bank. They are working somewhere in some other establishment, but they are continuing their hobby as science writing or science communication. So such people really can really join to the fold of science as well as science communication to contribute in a better way. As it's suggested that we require a training for the AWSAR awardees, for the AWSAR participants. I think that is fantastic idea. And it could be four-pronged activity. At one side, we have the scientist, we have the researcher. On the other side, we can have the journalist. And the third dimension could be the media, As we are now confronting number 8, communication is not limited to print media or electronic media. It has traveled far and has developed in leaps and bounds, like social media, digital media, blog writing. As far as Indian culture is concerned, we have a very tremendous tool for communication that is called folk media. We are very rich in folk. When it comes to communication, say in Kerala, so Kathkali could be useful. In Tamil Nadu, Velupatu could be useful. In Northeast, I think Bihu could be useful. In Rajasthan, puppetry is the performing art through which we can communicate the message of science even to the people who are illiterate and who are the lay people. So this is a kind of plethora of aspects and platforms can be created for connecting all these people so that we can have a multifarious science communication program in the country where the role of the AWSAR awardees, the AWSAR participants can be at the core, who will be the creators, who will be the providers of the authentic information. Because now we are confronting many issues like fake information, fake news, misinformation. So this is also the responsibility of the science communicators to provide the true science, because true science is very important. Whenever something is coming in media, it may have some kind of inclinations, sometime by industry, sometime by other groups. So science communication is really very, very responsible kind of activity. And I hope and I'm sure that the younger generation would really come forward for joining this very exciting area. And our panelists would be guiding this young force for taking up science communication as a hobby, as a career, as a profession, whatever the way they want. But society really needs their services. So now I think it is the time to move forward. So without losing any time, let me welcome once again all our panelists. And may I request to begin with Dr. Diksha Gupta to please ponder over on the subject. Then we can, the structure of the program is we will have a 10-minute deliberation by each of the panelists. Then we can have within panelists, then we will open up for the participants if they have some questions. These questions can come at the chat box. And I would request Rashmi to read them out, and then the respective panelists would like to answer the question. So this is the way we will proceed. So now over to Dr. Diksha Gupta. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and many thanks to Department of Science and Technology, Vigyan Prasar, and all the panelists here. My ongoing partners here, Dr. Rashmi Sharma and Dr. Bharat Bhushan, with whom I have been connecting and working with this program for quite some time. It is so gratifying to see just in few years we are here today when we are having a panel discussion about the job opportunities. Can I request, there is some feedback in the background, requesting anyone who is not speaking, please mute their microphone. Thank you. So it's a matter of honor and privilege to be associated with such a program, which not only is of national importance, but also have a huge societal impact. Research is not just about, I'm a scientist, I did some work, I published paper, and that's for my satisfaction, and then finding a knowledge. And often the time it also seeks manifestation in form of developing technology, solving societal problem, and several other things. But coming to specifically science communication piece, I have experienced this is slightly ignored or not given due importance what it deserves. So at least now when we are at the juncture, we are talking actively about it and thinking ways how to make it popular and how to realize its importance. And we all know the potential of getting anything popular among common people. So it's nothing. It's just like an art of storytelling. And AWSAR is mainly about, we are concentrating more on writing piece. But if you see the domain of science communication, it is much more broader. It could be photography. It could be in form of audio. It could be in form of like filmmaking, live storytelling, science comedy, or anything or everything. So there are a lot of manifestation how science communication can happen. And depending on all these modes, there are different career options which one can pursue. And especially in the era of social media, there are emerging options such as YouTuber and Facebook pages. A lot of people who are interested in writing, the most obvious form is doing freelancing work or a full-time job at being an editor or a correspondent or someone who commissions story for magazines, newspaper, and other popular science places. Additionally, a lot of new venues are coming up day by day. But behind all that, the obvious question comes, who is going to consume that? And why someone should be reading or watching or listening all that, what I'm creating. So this all comes back to 2 points. Is it interesting or entertaining? Which a lot of the time is priority when we try to engage in something, or am I building a knowledge or learning something out of it? So these are the two important aspects when we talk about the science communication. And if we are able to address these two aspects, there is a huge potential in science communication to become one of the popular choice for engaging people. For example, cricket or like any sports for that matter, or movies. These are quite popular choice for entertainment. People opt for it. So if I want to watch a movie, I necessarily need not to know acting or need not to be an actor. For me, what is more important? Am I able to relate it? And is it interesting for me? I may not necessarily know whether this actor is a method actor or it's a spontaneous actor or like what is the acting technique. As a viewer or a common person, the important piece is it entertaining enough? Is there a message for me? Or is this engaging with me? Similar concept apply to sports. So can we ask the same question in science communication when we are choosing these tools and method? Are they entertaining enough? Are they able to relate with people? Are people finding interesting enough? Or is there a knowledge piece or a story which people can take with them? So thinking from that perspective will make science communication a lot more popular and will create a demand. Once there is a demand, there will be a lot more opportunities coming up. And that's where people can think about science communication as a proper career option as well. In India, still there are a lot of options, but it's still limited, seeing the population size we have and seeing the size of scientific pool. So making science communication as a full stream, full-fledged career for thousands of people, it's really essential to create that level of demand. So with these things, then a lot of question comes up. All right, even if we create a demand, is there adequate quality, as Professor Ashutosh Sharma mentioned? And how to become a good science communicator? Do I know the places where I can train myself? What is the process to train for it? So there is a difference between trying out anything as a hobby versus being a professional into it. So obviously the starting point is a hobby and interest. I can be interested into something, but I have to continue to improve. I have to continue to learn. I have to continue to train and have to keep validating where do I stand in terms of thinking as a full-time professional there. So these are a lot of aspects. With that, I would stop here and would be pleased to hear from my fellow panelists what they think about it. And will also be interested to take any question in particular later on about it.
Thank you, Dr. Diksha. And Dr. Diksha has mentioned a couple of pertinent points. Number one, she asked why to do science communication. And it has to be interesting. Only then we can create a demand. When there is demand, there are opportunities, and for which we require training, and other avenues can be opened up. So with this, let us move forward to our next panelist, who is Dr. Mike Pandey. Dr. Mike Pandey ji, welcome to kindly share your views on this occasion. Over to you, sir.
It's very interesting, and we are a huge population, and science communication is the need of the day. And we have thousands of scientists and so many labs all over. But information from our labs don't come out into the open. They don't reach mainstream. And not much is known about our scientists. I remember that DST had initiated nearly 22 years ago an MSc in Science Communication course. And that was very good. That's what's needed. We need a bridge between scientists and the common man. And that's missing. So we need to really emphasize, create courses in an MSc communications course in science communications. And what happens is then these youngsters then can join in labs, media, mainstream, and even government agencies who are working on science-related projects. And they can help really take the jargon out of scientific information and create it into a palatable program which could reach out the people. And then that's where filmmakers come in. They take the information and translate it into engaging films and then show it to the people. The idea is to, if you want to increase the population, if you need to create a scientific temper and also make science interesting, you have to make programs that are of interest to the common person. And the way the science communicators would work then is to see from all the material that's available to him, what is important. What do I need out of this? What can I glean out of this so that it can reach people and engage them? And so when people are interested, when they're engaged, then they're impressed, when they understand that they really take interest and it carries on. And that's why it's very important for scientific information to be deciphered, simplified, translated into magazines, or just like Vigyan Prasar is doing, bringing out publications and all that, which are easy, but even easier perhaps for schools, colleges, newcomers into the arena, where information could be shared, value-based information that relates to a common person's lives. So that there's a science culture and a culture, the mass culture. How do you create a bridge? And these graduates, MSc communicators in science, would be the bridge that you need. And we have to promote them. We have to create courses like that, which DST had started 20 years ago. And then the need is to create places, to absorb them for the government, for media, and even for the environment agency where I'm working a lot with them. I'm looking for a science communicator who can bring out all the work and research they've done and decipher it, just bring it in 10 pages so I can translate it into value-based film. So that is missing. And until that bridge is created, we're going to have a tough time. And we have to understand the great gap between science and people. And films are perhaps the most effective tool of communication. I think in India, if you go to the public broadcaster Doordarshan, it has an outreach of over 800 million people, even the remotest areas. I've been to almost all the labs in India when I was doing a film for CSIR. And I met scientists who are doing incredible work. But I'd like to make films on them. How many people know about the horseshoe crab being protected? What is it? Why is it? So let me give you an example. When I visited the Orissa coast, I saw the horseshoe crab being thrown out and crushed. And I said, this is the oldest creature on the planet. What can I do to protect it? So I asked the guy, I said, why are you killing this? He says, इसमें मांस नहीं होता, कुछ नहीं होता, तो ये तो कचरा है, हमारा नेट खराब कर देता है. So I made a film on that, and it was a 3.5 minute film. And it was shown at a CSIR seminar. And the project was being shelved, and that 3.5 minute film brought the project back into the mainstream. So we need to make films. We need to communicate at the grassroots levels. We need to communicate with the general public, the farmers, the youth, and we need to communicate with policymakers if we want effective change. So as a filmmaker, those are the things I look at, because we have a diverse population and we have diversity of interest. Look at the states, different values. Therefore, how to generate interest and respect for nature, how to look at everything with a scientific perspective. That is so important. And for that, a culture has to start. If you look at the Western world, they have made science very interesting by bringing out feature films, stories. So storytelling is the key. You have all the information about the horseshoe crab, maybe, but I turned it into a story, made it more engaging so that it relates to every single person who watches the film. And it worked. The government brought in a legislation under the Wildlife 1972 Wildlife Act, and it's protected now. If a small film can do that, impress the policymakers, at the same time bring respect in the common fisherman who doesn't kill it anymore. That is so important. The same thing with vultures. A small film, people understood the value of the vulture. So MSc communicators in science would be an army of youngsters and people who would be dedicated towards deciphering and taking information, value-based information to people to say, hey, look, we have to protect this because of this. This is what it does to us. So you have to address, as I said, 3 to 4 layers. And for that reason, every lab which is working on various programs needs to have a science communicator. And we need to promote this and then give them an opportunity so that they can be absorbed into the mainstream. Vigyan Prasar is doing a great job, and the National Council for Science and Technology, they're focused into science communications. They're bringing out papers and publications, very good, very important. This is material that's required. I use them. I look forward to every copy that I get because of there is information for me. It's information for the scientists, for people who are interested in becoming scientists, and even for a common person like me. I'd like to glean, take out value-based information and turn it into a picture. But they need to do more. They need, for example, I think, I may be wrong, what is not known in the country is respect for ecosystems, the interrelationship, the interdependence, the interconnectivity of all living things on the planet, how we need everything. So why not create maybe publications? Vigyan Prasar could take an active role in this. And then what they could do is on ecosystem like wetlands, I would love to see a pictorial film that would hold the interest of a youngster at a primary stage. And then it would develop, and pictures, good pictures would leave an impression. And if a good film is made, every such book should go with a nice small 5-minute film. Those visuals leave an impression on minds. That's how you increase the population of people. When I started about 18, 20 years making a program called Earth Matters, which reaches 800 million people, it was an effort to be simple and bring information to the people. And there are over 4,500 Earth Matters nature clubs spread all over India, including Leh and Ladakh, where every youngster has taken it on himself a pledge that nahi Prithvi meri maa hai, isko bachana mera kaam hai ye. And you know, they equate it to their own mother who's given them life. Similarly, science has to be brought up. Everything around us is a science. How to make it more engaging and fun. So right from the school, primary school, where you have got little books, drawings, nature, sun's rays, small caterpillars, butterflies, to a higher level where the policymakers have to decide that we need to protect the vulture and the role it plays. I'll give you another example. I made a film. There were hardly 2,000-3,000 vultures left. And I've been in India, I've been to Kanpur and in Orcha, where I've seen thousands and thousands of vultures. A film I was making for Discovery. And then when I heard that the vultures were heading for extinction, I took my Jeep and did an 8,000-kilometer run. And I could find only 23 vultures, that also into Bikaner in a carcass ground. So I filmed that. Simply, there's no drama, nothing, that these vultures are a farmer's friend. And anthrax was being produced and many children had died. Foot and mouth disease was taking place and creeping towards the Gir forest. And the Prime Minister at that time had given a directive that the diclofenac, which was killing the vultures, must be stopped. And within 6 months, phased out. But after 2 years, it still hadn't stopped. And I read a little piece in Hindu saying, vultures towards a tailspin, towards extinction. Now here's effective communication, effective science communication. I spoke no science, just filmed the vultures, and I was walking. The film is called Broken Wing, because I was walking on a 1 foot thick blanket carpet of dead vultures lying in Bikaner, killed because of diclofenac, which creates dehydration in the system, visceral gout, and they die within 3 days. So I made a film and told them, look, this is the farmer's best friend. It eats away dead meat. It's a buffalo in 3 days. But today, it's becoming extinct. It's in danger. It's life in danger. And we need it. And it went on broadcast 3 times in different languages. Farmers wrote. Everyone stopped it. There was a huge spread. I mean, a double spread in Indian Express. Vultures towards extinction. And the drug controller general had to ban within 3 days all diclofenac. This is from the ground level to the policymakers. And substitute moloxicam was introduced. But when farmers saw that, the reaction, I went and did a little, when I make a film, I go and take a reaction, and people said, sir, हमारे हाथ में तो खून लगा हुआ है, हमारे हाथ से vulture मर रही है, हमको मालूम ही नहीं. Because they were using diclofenac in the cattle, and if the vulture ate it, the vulture died. So they stopped using diclofenac. So it became an effective program. The vultures are returning. So effective communication is very important. And without being judgmental or pedantic, nobody was accused, even when the whale shark, the film I made, which brought legislation globally to protect it, was not accusing the fishermen or anyone. We need the whale shark. We need it for stabilizing the Earth's atmosphere. Guys, what are we going to do? Let's join hands and protect it, because it is something which is very crucial to the food chain. I mean, when you have MSCs in science communications, then you have a strong foundation. And Vigyan Prasar, for example, and National Council for Science and Technology need people like that to create the foundation. Each lab needs them. And that's where our focus should be, to create a group of people, totally committed, dedicated storytellers who can talk to the scientist, interface. They are the interface between me and the scientist, perhaps. So I don't have to spend too much time telling the story. I think I'm a science communicator, but more are needed, dedicated, committed in the laboratory. So maybe the government can think, maybe DST can think that, make it compulsory. And then you must have a space, you must have a position, a post to absorb them. That is so important. If we are serious about spreading the communication, science communication, for example, then we need to create a post, not just train people or say, hey, go and do a course in communication and let's see what you do. That's like I heard saying somebody's opened a vegetable shop, somebody's acting as a clerk. No, these are people that we need. This is what the future needs. Just like social media, electronic, attention spans are shrinking. Nobody wants to see a 25, 30-minute film or 1 hour film, because we all know about culture, about everything, about the life cycles. What we need to know in 5 minutes, all the content, all the value-based information. And if we can do that, then I think we're in a good wicket. I think Vigyan Prasad is doing a great job, and so is the National Council for Scientific and Technology Communication. We have the work power, workhorses. We need people to man these stations. And so I personally think we need a new breed, energetic, dynamic breed of science communicators in the country. They are the actual bridge between the scientists, our labs, and the common man. Well, shut up now and I won't take up too much of your time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pandey. Thank you so much for speaking from your heart. And we know that science communication is very dear to you, and so we are now talking it and trying to pass on this passion to the fellow participants all across the country. Dr. Pandey has said the requirement of the courses in science communication leading to MSc and further. I think that is the need of the hour. And for instance, let me share over here that number of programs NCSCC has already started, and some of them are still going on. And recently, in National Institute of Science Communication and Information Resources, that is CSIR NSCare, we started one MSc in Science and Technology Communication and PhD in Science and Technology Communication program. So I think this is the information we can share furthermore. And Dr. Pandey is for having at least one science communication professional in all the laboratories. And he is open for welcoming new age science communicators for joining the field of filmmaking, ecosystems, biodiversity, etc. So whole ocean of opportunities is really wide open for you, and the panelists are really a guiding light for the youngsters. Now let us move forward, and we have with us Professor Dinesh Kumar, who has been the director of Institute of Mass Communication in Science and Technology, established in the University of Lucknow with the help of the National Council for Science and Technology Communication a couple of decades back. So, Professor Dinesh Kumar ji, we would like to have your experiences and how you are going to deliberate on the subject, that is career in the present perspective. Over to Dr. Dinesh Kumar ji.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Pateria. I am one of the privileged person who has the credit to start MSc Mass Communication Science and Technology courses at University of Lucknow with the initiative and support of NCSTC, DST Government of India. And this NCSTC, what I remember in 1994 has offered some financial grant and other help to start this course at Lucknow University as MSc Tech, MSc 3-semester based course at the University of Lucknow. And eligibility for the admission of this course was those persons who have already done the postgraduate in any science discipline. So when I took over this institute in 1997, I realized that it would be difficult to attract the students who have already done their MSc in any science field, and they will not like to come. They will come only till that period, so they are not getting any chance. So not by choice, but by chance they. So I just took a very strong decision and a kind of gamble to just to start MSc Mass Communications, a science communication course at the University of Lucknow. It means entirely different discipline over the other science subject in science faculty. So with this initiative, I started this MSc course. After eligibility was graduation in any science discipline, maybe biology background or mathematical background or medical or engineering. And with that, I notified it. I invited the application, and surprisingly, in very first advertisement, I got more than 2,000 to 200 applications. So it becomes very difficult for me to whom should I admit. So with the consent of the Vice Chancellor, I conducted the admission test, written test comprising general knowledge test on science and language. Language is very important because if you are poor in communication, whether it is a oral or in writing, you cannot be successful. Communication is a very strong tool for any subject, whether it is Hindi, English, history, science. So with this, and after a written test, I conducted the selection through interview. Different panels have been formed and 30 students have been selected. And with this, I started the course. And second thing which I emphasize very particularly, that faculty should be very good. Since Lucknow already having 4 institutes run by CSIR, DST, ICR, so I used to invite the scientists to deliver the lecture. I also invite the journalists to deliver the lecture. I also invite the commerce people just for advertisement and other things. So with this fear in mind, what will happen after 2 years? But surprisingly, all the students have been absorbed. And one of the students is still working in Vigyan Prasad. Nimish Kapoor is first batch student. And surprisingly, in 4th semester, we have project work along with the papers. So Nimish has selected to make. He came to me and asked me, sir, instead of project, can I make a film? Okay, no problem. So first, but I told him that first you show me the script. He worked on the Gomti River pollution, and he submitted that film instead of project, and it's very good film. So in this way, I started this course, and so 13 years I had been director for the institute till I retirement, and every year there was a problem for admission, huge rush, and large number of students are already involved in the scientific communication work in some institute, some newspaper, electronic media. They are writing articles for the newspaper, and one is also working in Nuclear Thermal Power Corporation, Government of India, as editor of the magazine. Second thing what I did, I used to send them in a different scientific institute just to take the interviews of the scientists and submit the report. During those periods, Science Congress was held at Lucknow University. So we used to prepare daily newspaper and release in the morning with the help of the students. These students, you're taking the interviews of very famous scientists like Dr. Kasturi Ranjan, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Dr. Daljit Singh, and I also invited them to just to deliver lecture over here, in my institute. Invited the expert, those who have visited Antarctica, Arctica, just to deliver their experiences to my students. And I am very successful in making the science communicator, which are really, earlier they had not a passion for science communication, but after completing this course, most of them become passionate for science communication, and they were not bothered with what should I do. They start writing the articles in the newspaper. I do remember there was one student, Sarojini Kumari from Patna. She was very worried, sir, what will be my future? I asked her just to write, you select some spices, condiments, and other aromatic plants and daily send an article on newspaper. She earned 35,000 rupees in 2 years. So if you are good in subject, if you are having knowledge on the particular topic, if you have good vocabulary on particular topic, if you have good communication skill, so one definitely he or she will get a success. The communication is the key of success. Now, everybody want to look better, live better, eat better, medical better, education better, infrastructure better, aviation better, vehicle better, everything better. So it's better. From where this better will come? It is the science which provides the better quality of life in the lesser effort to human being. So it is therefore, if you are able to understand the basics of the science, applied science, and it is only possible through education. If you want to infuse anything in the society, the best way is to give education in that particular field, and education can be given at any level, at higher secondary level, at graduation level, because what I think, the graduation level is such a stage. After that, students can start realizing about himself and career oriented, and may decide what to do, where to do. So nowadays, demand for, if anything which is in rare, it is in more demand. So science communicators are definitely not so much in number, but they are in demand. And I request, my humble request is the authorities of the Government of India, Secretary DST, and other DBT, that they should do something, that at least one science communicator may be placed in each and every institute. It would be better to make a annual report, progress report, and able to communicate the researches to the masses. Because most of the scientists, they are very shy, they don't come out, they are unable to explain their researches to the masses. And if they have been asked to just to deliver a lecture on their own researches, they speak in purely scientific language, so common man is unable to understand and say it is useless. When the thing becomes useless, number one, if the person is not able to explain you in the correct way, not in communicative language, it is duty of this person, it is duty of a teacher who make the subject easy, not difficult. So if person, a science communicator, a scientist is able to explain his researches in very communicative language, so then naturally, without doubt, public masses will start taking interest, and they can contribute something also. Because I have visited all the hill stations of the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, east to west, and I remained there for months in search of the plants. I found that local language very important. So it is again, I will emphasize that the science communicator should not be depend only on one language. The local language should also be given the same importance, just to communicate them, just to tell them. So they may be Hindi, English, Urdu, Malayalam, Telugu, Tamil. So if one, not necessary that I may learn Tamil language, I may learn Malayalam language, I may learn Punjabi language. The person, those who are residing there, they are native of those places. If they are coming for the science communication, they first understand what science is, what the benefit of this science is there. Because every individual, knowingly or unknowingly, is using science some or other way. It's a very little example. Nowadays, because the pandemic, this COVID-19 pandemic, suddenly there is a flood of herbal drugs, herbal thing, giloy, is giloy. And I have found those even do not identify the giloy, they are taking the ipomia plant, ipomia stem, ipomia leaf, and you saying, selling it in the name of giloy. So because we don't know it, because nobody is there to explain it, nobody is there to tell them, nobody is there to check them. So this is the situation of the suddenly demand of anything. So my humble suggestion is that science communication courses should be encouraged, and it is the NCSTC, and I am very thankful to Dr. Pateria, who has always supported all the program which I have asked for NCST. Dr. Pateria agreed to. And another very important aspect what NCSTC was doing, they are organizing National Science and Technology Communication Congress every year since 2001. And first Congress was held at Lucknow. Since then, I and my students joining, attending these science congresses, and it is very beneficial, very beneficial. I just listened from Dr. Ashutosh Sharma that they organize meeting as a science journalist. There are only 20 science journalists. But Dr. Pateria, who used to organize this National Science Communication and Science and Technology Communication Congress every year, some other places, and a huge crowd, big crowd. And in that crowd, what happened? One fellow, I don't know, there was a girl who attending after this Congress came to me that I and asked me, just, sir, I want to do PhD in science communication. You never did MSc in science communication? Well, no, sir, I did communication, and majority of portion is from science. So just I want to ignore her, but she was insisting that I will do. So when I observed the potentiality of that girl, I am not hesitate to name her, Ruchi Singhal. She did PhD in science communication under me, and first she served the Galgotia Institute at Greater Noida. Then she was lecturer in Jaipur MIT School, and some of the students of science communication have also cleared the JRF net and are involved in teaching in the University of the Science Communication. Dr. Farina Rizvi, very good science communicator and expert in science communication, is a professor in the regular university, and I had the privilege just to evaluate her thesis and other activities also. So I still of the opinion, I'm still having the opinion that there is much need of science communicator. There are 38 to 39 laboratories under CSIR, and I am of the opinion that each lab should have one science communicator. NBRI in Lucknow have one science communicator. Was a student of the, she did MSc in science communication. And number two, there should be regular visit of the science institution by the student. There should be encouraged to write a report in Lucknow whenever there used to be any seminar. During those days, there was no webinar. So I used to send the students just to go there, attend it, take the interview of the scientist, and submit report within 2 days and compile it. So this was the process of learning. I delivered the science, the popular lecture in Hindi on All India Radio for 15 years, and in the form of stories. All aspects of earthquake है, पेड़ पौधों में जान होती है नहीं होती है, उसमें स्टिमुलाई होते नहीं होते हैं, इस तरह की स्टोरी राइटिंग लिख के ऑल इंडिया रेडियो पर भी हमारे स्टूडेंट में करते आए हैं, मैंने भी किया है, वही मैंने उनको सिखाया। तो मैं यही कहना चाहूँगा कि NCST and Vigyan are very helpful, and in Lucknow University when Science Congress was held in 2002, Mr. Sharma, I think B.K. Sharma and Hassan Javed Khan from Niskaya and Vigyan Prasad, they were covering the Science Congress, and I provided all kinds of my students very helpful to them. When Dr. Pateria has also visited that venue, I just had a press information center, media center, and I managed the whole media. And every scientist was given a status of celebrity, and their press interviews are conducted during the evening, and all has been done by the students of MSc Science. So still, I want to say they should be encouraged, and CSTC are encouraging, and they should also encourage for such type of courses, not only in one university, but other universities. But problem is that I'm a man of botany. In spite of such a busy schedule, I was giving 4 hours daily to mass communication, 2 hours to information publication of the university, I was also the OSD of the Vice Chancellor. I was also the proctor of the university. And I never missed any class, any class. Dr. Mike Pandey has emphasized making the film. I'm very strong opinion of this thing. He was emphasizing to make the film on the animals, insects, crabs, vultures. I'm similarly in the same way. They should also make the film on the plants, rare plants. Ginkgo biloba is a living fossil plant. In India, only few trees are growing because it was a holy tree for the Buddhists. They used to cultivate this tree in their monasteries. So was one of the reasons for the survival of this plant in China and Japan. In India, I had been some forest near Ranikhet, and just at the gate of forest department, a big tree of Ginkgo biloba was there, and I saw that people were cutting the wood for making the fire, protect themselves from the winter. I cried, "What you are doing? You are damaging the living fossil tree." Not nobody is there because they had no knowledge. They had not been told. Who will told them? Who will tell them? It is the science communicators, those having the knowledge of this thing, and they will pass on knowledge to the local people, masses, what are beneficial, what are not beneficial. So, as Dr. Mike has also emphasized, that there should be trained students who, having done MSc in science communication, may prove very helpful in protecting the flora and fauna and telling the masses the uses and misuses and benefit of whole natural ecosystem. Today, what we are facing, the pandemic, you can also imagine what may be the reasons. What may be the reason? Now, earlier, nobody knows what were the viruses. But with the spread of this pandemic, everybody came to know the viruses. Viruses, fortunately, they are non-living in the atmosphere, but becomes living as soon as they enter the host tissue. So, so many things which are still needed and will always be needed for the masses to know. A lot of public money is utilized in carrying out the researches, especially in relation to our country, because wealth, economic of any country, any state depend on its natural resources. And its exploitation to the use of man. It is the scientist, it is the technologist who will exploit the natural resources and make the country very wealthy and prosperous. So with this, I will not take much time, and I'm ending my talk again with the request that such type of courses should be encouraged in other universities also with the dedicated and passionate teachers, experts, which may create a interest and passion in the students for this purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, indeed, for sharing your long experience while working in the area of science as well as in communication. And that really gives a entire journey and how you have been contributing for science communication and encouraging the young science communicators, young researchers, young scholars in the area of science communication. मुझे याद है कि आपने जब इंडियन साइंस कांग्रेस हुई थी तो आपने बहुत बड़ा मीडिया का जो हम छोटे छोटे कवरेज के लिए तरसते हैं मीडिया में, आपने फुल पेजेस की स्टोरीज लगभग सभी समाचार पत्रों में, टीवी चैनल्स में उस समय आई थी, एंड दैट इज रियली ग्रेट.
किया था सारी स्टूडेंट किया था. और पटेरिया, आई मस्ट टेल यू वन थिंग कि 13 years of my service to science communication, I did not took a single penny as an honorarium. Suddenly I got fascinated and I got passion. Still, I am having passion and are ready to do anything for the science and society.
Even we have seen you have invited various faculty members from mainstream media like The Hindu and all other groups, including scientists, those
Yes.
who have a flair in communication. So it was a great platform. So let us thank Professor Dinesh Kumar ji को धन्यवाद देते हुए अब हमारे साथ हैं आकाशवाणी के पूर्व अपर महानिदेशक और बीबीसी लंदन में भी रहे श्री राजीव शुक्ला जी। तो आपसे अनुरोध है कि आप अपने विचार कृपया हमारे जो श्रोता और दर्शक हैं उनके सामने रखें ताकि उनको कुछ इस बारे में प्रेरणा और जानकारी प्राप्त हो।
जी, नमस्कार। Good evening to all the respected co-panelists and other people who are attending this webinar. Firstly, I shall like to be assured that my voice is clearly and properly audible.
Yes, it is. It is. All India Radio voice and BBC
Thank
voice.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Actually, Dr. Pateria, because we have worked together, I have worked together with Rashmi ji, and when Dr. Mike Pandey, I mean, when he speaks or when we meet, we never fail to recall our association to Sarguja, because that was the film he had made on the elephants of Sarguja, the last migration. So, I mean, it's such a nice feeling to be amongst a family of fellow thinkers and communicators and people who have a passion for science communication, which is the need of the hour, particularly in these times of COVID and otherwise as well. I'm reminded, actually, when I joined All India Radio, AIR used to have a mechanism wherein there were special recruitments for posts of science officers. So certain stations had these science cells, science communication cells, and the people with requisite qualifications were selected and worked as science officers. So the idea of saying this is to communicate the importance which was being attached, or which is being attached by the public service broadcaster, All India Radio as well as Doordarshan, to the field of science communication. But the story doesn't stop there. For instance, I joined as a program executive after selection from UPSC at a station at All India Radio Raipur. Raipur was then in Madhya Pradesh, 1981. Now, of course, it is the capital of Chhattisgarh. So I was a science graduate from Banaras Hindu University. And though I had not pursued higher education in science, once you, study science, those genes remain with you in your mental makeup, which was the case with me. And I was fond of reading a lot. So science literature, as well as I would further elaborate on that, science fiction. So it so happened that at Raipur, my station director said that we should have, because see, in All India radio stations, there are general programs, that is programs for general audience, and there are programs for a special audience. For instance, rural audience, women, children, youth, industrial workers, and so on. So you have programs, these programs, and science-related items were a part of many of these special audience programs as well as general audience programs. But my station director said that let us start a program exclusively as a science magazine, and he gave me the responsibility, and the name of the program was Vigyan Lok. So I started being a science communicator in the field of All India Radio or radio broadcasting from I still remember the date, 17th October 1981, when the first edition of Vigyan Lok went on air. And the format was that I would give a kind of small preface. Then there was an interview with one of the experts, scientists, an interview or a talk, depending upon how he or she was comfortable. And then I used to end it with snippets of latest science information, which I used to gather from magazines, newspapers, and all that. I still remember that I was, quite worried, and I read about the new phenomenon of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, known as AIDS, HIV, and I included in my program. And then people came to me and said, "Ki aap to dar phaila rahe hain." मैंने कहा, "No, I think this is something which has been reported about in America." So the point is that, I mean, that is how you went about it. I shall also like to mention at this juncture, because Dr. Pateria is with us and he also has a connection to that area. There is a station at Chhatarpur in Bundelkhand of Madhya Pradesh, and there used to be a station director, Mr. Rajendra Prasad. And Mr. Rajendra Prasad excelled in science communication. I mean, in fact, he set the standard in many ways. To give you an example, suppose he has to talk about gravity. So he will be, the title of the program will be आइए एक पत्थर फेंके, you know. So the idea is that when you, अब आप एक पत्थर फेंकेंगे तो प्रोजेक्टाइल बनेगा, तो वो क्यों नीचे आएगा और क्या होगा, तो the entire gravity issue will be there. So because my fellow speakers, my previous speakers have consistently and very justifiably talked that the need is for the science communication to be effective, is for it to be effective also, eye-catching also, ear-catching also. And I think that is the way these people demonstrated. I shall just give you some more information about what All India Radio in particular did. All the stations of All India Radio, as I mentioned, do broadcast programs on science in their general as well as special audience programs. I have already described that. In addition to these programs on the local as well as state-wise hookups, there are 2 programs every month on national hookup. These are both in the form of science magazines, one in Hindi, another in English. The Hindi magazine is called Vigyan Bharati, broadcast every 4th Wednesday of the month at 10 p.m. And the English magazine is called Radioscope. This is broadcast on 2nd Friday of the month at 10 p.m. again. So, and these magazines have contributions from across the country, from different regions. And they have, of course, items on different subjects, different fields. So these are, I would say, the most important science communication activities going on in All India Radio. But the story goes further. All India Radio has had the fortune of collaborating with Vigyan Prasar. And I remember that it is in 1980s that the first serial, the science serial, the name was Vigyan Vidhi, the method of science. It was broadcast, and the scripts were created with in a joint endeavor manner. Then the production was done by All India Radio, and the Hindi edition was made. Then it was made into various other languages also, and thus started a series of such serials. Vigyan Vidhi was the first. Then came Nisarg Sampada. Then came Radio Date. Then there has been, in the recent years, I remember, on sustainable development, on disaster management, and so on. So basically, and there is no time when one or the other Vigyan Prasar collaboration serial is not being broadcast by All India Radio. So this is in addition to everything which I have talked about earlier. In fact, when you talk science and radio, was a very interesting incident, and some of you might be knowing it. On 30th of October 1938, in USA, the science fiction work of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, of course, I mean, all of us know that, it was broadcast as a radio play. And it created such a big impact that when UNESCO started thinking of choosing a day to nominate that as a World Radio Day, then 30th October was one of the dates in contention because of the mass impact of that science fiction play which was broadcast. I would take it from here and say that we have all read H.G. Wells, we have read Jules Verne, we have read Isaac Asimov, and so many others. And I cannot but marvel at H.G. Wells in particular, because Time Machine, when I remember, Time Machine is not just a science fiction work, it is also a social commentary on the kind of civilization that we have. And it has a wonderful interdisciplinary approach, a philosophical subtext also, which is very, very important. When we talk of the present scenario, I know that in the West, there is a very popular serial, The Big Bang Theory, which has the story of about 4 to 5 young scientists who are very, very intelligent, but as is the popular image, not very socially proficient, and their lives, their adventures. There is one Indian also in that group, and it became such a success that the main character Sheldon Cooper in that serial. Another serial was made later, which was called Young Sheldon, where the childhood of Sheldon Cooper was shown. Now, going to the Indian television, Turning Point is a program which is very close to our heart. Professor Yashpal and Girish Karnadji, the stalwarts, used to host it. There have been, wonderful shows. I remember that Solar Eclipse, and the way they used to interpret and elaborate on all things scientific. Then, of course, Earth Matters has been talked about by Dr. Mike Pandey himself, who was the spirit behind it. And we have had a series of science broadcasters, science communicators in broadcasting as well as in social life. We all remember Mr. Anil Agrawal, CSE is, he has flown from that. Then we had, I think many of you might be knowing, we had our colleague, Mr. Braj Mohan Gupta, a wonderful science broadcaster. In fact, I remember still when the computers were coming on, he sent me a ghazal on computer, and he said I am calling it Compuzal because it is a ghazal for computers. And there was Ratnavali Mitra working with him. Of course, when you talk of science fiction in India, Jayant Narlikar sir, and I am very happy to say that I am also a BHU product, and so is Professor Narlikar. And it was a pleasure and an honor to meet him at one of the alumni functions at BHU. So I think all these give us idea about how to approach popular science. I'm not saying that science fiction is a substitute for science communication. No, it is not. But science fiction can be there to arouse people's curiosity in scientific things, so that, they can then move on to real and serious science also. There was another initiative, because I spent a lot of my time in Madhya Pradesh, and there was Bharat Gyan Vigyan Jatha there. They also used to employ Nukkad Natak, music. Pateria Sahab taught the folk medium. So I remember that they also used music, and Nukkad plays were also there. I think all these things need to be remembered. I am sorry to say, I might be wrong, but I have a feeling that over the years, as the values of the society have changed and the money has become more and more important with the capitalism, with market economy, with whatever, not the right place to go into it. But the fact is that now you don't find that kind of zeal in many youngsters for science education as it used to be there during our younger days. I think that needs to be addressed, because India, with its great diversity and diversity of problems as well, we need science at every step of the way. Now, the actual theme of this webinar is, what are the opportunities available? So I have mentioned that public broadcasters, that is All India Radio and Doordarshan, they do have many avenues, many programs of broadcasting science programs. तो इस तरह से एक रास्ता हमेशा बनता है हमारे जो विज्ञान में रुचि रखने वाले people who are adept at writing on scientific subjects and speaking well on those subjects. They have the opportunity to participate in the programs of All India Radio as well as Doordarshan. I'm a bit disappointed, not a bit, I'm quite disappointed that the private electronic media, be it television and be it radio, they haven't been goaded into, or they haven't yet taken upon themselves the role of being a partner in the science communication to the extent that is needed and that they should have. But I think, if the total society's environment goes towards that, they have to follow the trend also. Vigyan Prasar has, for instance, it was being said, I think Secretary Saab said, that so many research activities are going on, but we don't find a mention in the Indian media. What we find that Stanford University has done this, Harvard has done that, Oxford has done that. So basically, there is this this Science Wire, I think is the name, from Vigyan Prasar. but that needs to have more visibility. Maybe science, Ministry of for Science and Technology and Ministry of HRD, which is now on the way to being Ministry of Education once more. I mean, they could have a collaboration that all the education institutions should be made aware of this service, and they should have regular interactions amongst themselves. They might be looking at the articles which appear there, then they can talk about these, then there could be competitions or events there. So there a whole movement of science communication needs to be created. Another thing I would suggest is that community radio is a very potential field, because unlike the profit-driven privately owned radio, community radios also have uh, public service as one of their basic uh, objects. And so I would say that I know that Science and Technology Ministry, they have been working with community radio stations also, but that needs to be further strengthened. Another thing which I was thinking and which came to my mind is syndicating articles. You know, there are so many, unlike in West, where the print medium is facing a decline with the new and emerging media coming in. Frankly, at this juncture, I shall say I'm not talking much of social media because that has been talked about earlier. So I shall not just add to that. Of course, social media has wonderful potential for young and energetic people. But I'm going back to the print media, because unlike in West, in India, the print media is still growing, and it is also true of the language print media. That means the regional languages, the Malayalam, the Kannada, the Marathi, the Bangla, Punjabi, and all. So I remember that people, the newspapers, the magazines, the periodicals, which are coming from smaller places, which do not have that much of advertising support, and they are looking for good quality material. Maybe Vigyan Prasar, Ministry of for Science and Technology, can think of grooming writers, and then these articles can be used as in a syndicated way across the country in different publications, because they are always looking for material. And finally, I would say that disaster management communication is a very, very important field. We know that because of nature's own dynamics, as well as what we have done to nature, to the ecology, to everything, the frequency and the ferocity of disasters have increased. And so disaster communication has become very, very important. This also is a subject which requires the communicators to be scientifically aware about the technical terms, how to make them broadcast or communication worthy, what is the language to be used. COVID-19 is going on, and while of course everybody knows that all the media around the world is now concentrating on this, but there is a factor of stigma and discrimination also here, which has been talked about by the UN Secretary General, by so many others, by WHO, by our political leaders. And also the issue is that stigma springs from ignorance. I do not know the scientific facts about the disease, so I am easily uh, misled into believing things, and I can be purveyor of a stigma, which can then make things even more difficult. So I think that I will just end with the. In fact, I was talking to one of the जिसे हम गुरु बहन कहते हैं अपने यहाँ. I did my journalism and mass communication from Banaras University, and one of the my juniors, a girl who is working with a scientific publication, I was talking to her ki do you think are the avenues? So she mentioned the social media, she mentioned the publications, and she mentioned all. She also mentioned a subject which I think is which I haven't been I haven't heard being mentioned here. Whenever I went to say America, I lived there for 2 years working in Voice of because we are in an age when dogma and so many other things are also competing, and particularly in the private media, I would say. मैं उसमें विस्तार में नहीं जाऊंगा। वो झाड़ फूंक, वो चुड़ैल, वो इच्छाधारी नागिन, वो जो तमाशा हमारे यहाँ स्क्रीन पे चल रहा है, उसको देखते हुए मुझे लगता है बहुत ही जरूरी है कि विज्ञान की दृष्टि को, विज्ञान की मानसिकता को, विज्ञान के विचारों को, साइंटिफिक टेम्परामेंट को हम लोगों तक पहुंचाएं। और इसके लिए जो हमारे नौजवान लिखने पढ़ने वाले हैं, जो अवसर मुझे मिला, द अपॉर्चुनिटी आई गॉट while evaluating the articles which written by the young research scholars, I must say that I was highly impressed. Of course, there is room for improvement, but I believe that with practice and with the passage of time, all of these people will get better. The younger talents will come, and there is a huge opportunity and a huge necessity for taking science to the people, and that is what the need of the hour is. Thank you.
वेल सेड श्री राजीव जी। और मुझे लगता है जब मीडिया में साइंस कम्युनिकेशन के ट्रेंड लोग आएंगे तो अपने आप ये सारी जो समस्याएं हैं आपने बताई हैं ये दूर होंगी। एंड आई कैन रिकॉल व्हेन वी वर मेकिंग ए फिल्म फॉर ट्रेनिंग द न्यू रिक्रूट्स इन प्रसार भारती, देन वी हैपेंड टू गेट ए बाइट फ्रॉम मार्क टुली, एंड ही सेड to signify the importance of radio, he said, until or unless you add pictures to radio, it will continue to help you create pictures in your mind. So great words that Mark Tully said. So radio will remain significant, be it community radio, internet radio, or the traditional radio. So you have mentioned about science cells and how whole saga of science communication through All India Radio. I think we need to replicate the things and move forward with new innovative ideas and programs. So with that, I think we have reached to the end of the panel. Panelists, whatever they wanted to say. And now I think because time is running very fast, I think time is up. So can we open the floor for taking questions from the participants, or if the panelists have some questions amongst them, that is also can be done. But I think let us prefer to have questions from the participants. I would request my colleagues. I can see the comments on my computer, and there are only comments. So far, I have not came across any question. But my colleagues, if you are on different media like Facebook or India TV, etc., if you are getting some questions, so I think we can take them up right now. So very interesting points have emerged over the discussion, like the major crux of the development of new generation of science communicators. I think training was emphasized by one and all. And the second thing is the regular courses, because if we want to develop a systematically trained manpower, so we have to have regular courses leading to degree, PG and PhD in science and technology communication, so that they are eligible for getting jobs in various openings whenever they come in the state organization or maybe international organizations or elsewhere. And there is also need was felt for having a kind of interaction between journalists and scientists. And they are the major players in the process of science and technology communication. And one thing was mentioned by one of the panelists, that disasters are happening very frequently nowadays. And I think radio has done really fantastic when it happened in Kashmir. And I remember the people from Radio Kashmir, they climbed up the hill, the Sankaracharya hill, and they started broadcasting from there. And that is how they were able to rescue many people.
Was that the regular transmitter was inundated, the primary service, and they had a secondary service of the commercial service from at the top of Shankaracharya hill. So the rest of the story I have told, how they all went by boat and trudged up and kept on the broadcasting.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if we have some questions, we can take up now. Or now floor is open for all the panelists. If they have something, this is the time. Maybe we can take up 1 or 2 points. Then we will conclude. There is a question. Let me read it out. What should be done for popular science communication in scientific institutions? I think who will respond? Diksha, would you like?
Yes, I can.
Please.
So, first of all, thank you for all the panelists. It was really fascinating to hear the diverse view and your own experience. Coming back to the training piece, I think this is exactly what we are doing or trying to do in AWSAR program. How a practicing scientist can build that forte, not just writing a scientific paper, but also evolve as a popular science writer. See, the first thing, whether you are writing a report or a grant or a publication or any piece of write up, the most important part for that is for whom you are writing, what is their understanding level, and then you have to articulate your content in a way which is lucid. Until a person is able to relate with what you have written, it has almost no meaning. So most of the time, this communication is half like, I expressed. मैंने लिख दिया अभी मुझे नहीं पता है समझना नहीं समझना आपका प्रॉब्लम है. So science communication or any form of communication is not about that. We have to think from the audience perspective. आपको उनके शू में जाके सोचना पड़ेगा कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल समवन in any institute for that matter, if I'm working in chemistry or biology, forget about the common people. Even you think about your colleagues in physics or in your colleagues in like sociology, humanity, or any other branch, they have a decent IQ and common sense, but they might not be aware of those scientific terms. So lucid मतलब आपको बिना उसकी साइंटिफिक इंपॉर्टेंस कम किए यू हैव टू आर्टिकुलेट इट इन सच अ मैनर कि मैसेज कन्वे हो आपका, लेकिन बहुत सिंपल भाषा में. And this is exactly, if you compare with films or any other medium, they do such a complex concept and they demonstrate it through emotion or like the scene they create and several other type of thing. But in writing, that has to go by your words. So selection of your words, simple words, right language. You don't need a fancy English or anything. It just need to be a very basic grammar. Most of the time people ask me this question कि मैम बड़े जर्नल्स में पब्लिश करने के लिए और इंटरनेशनल मैगजीन में लिखने के लिए बहुत अच्छी वोकैबुलरी चाहिए. अच्छी वोकैबुलरी का मतलब है एप्रोप्रिएट वोकैबुलरी. यू नीड टू हैव द राइट वर्ड्स टू एक्सप्रेस व्हाट यू वांट टू कन्वे. और दूसरा बात है कि प्रैक्टिस, या एग्जैक्टली, एंड प्रैक्टिस इज द पीस. कभी ऐसा नहीं होता है कि हमने आज से लिखना शुरू किया एंड देन इन एन आवर आई रोट अ स्टोरी. इट्स अ लॉन्ग प्रोसेस. बहुत पेशेंस चाहिए इसमें, वैलिडेशन चाहिए, पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू चाहिए, पर्सपेक्टिव चाहिए. आप अपने कलीग को दीजिए, आप अपने सुपरवाइजर्स को दीजिए, आप घर में ऐसे लोगों को जिन्हें पढ़ना लिखना आता है बट दे नेसेसरीली आर नॉट फ्रॉम साइंस बैकग्राउंड. इफ दे कैन अंडरस्टैंड देन योर स्टोरी मेक लॉट ऑफ सेंस. So this is exactly the level you take it. So it's very different. It's like a bottom-up approach. If you are writing a popular science article versus a scientific article, which is a top-to-bottom approach. So आपका audience बिल्कुल different है.
Yes. We have another question by Shaljat Selu, who asks what kind of challenges are faced by science journalists. I think anybody, Shukla ji?
जी, challenges तो ये है कि आप you have to find the audience. That is the first thing. In a milieu where, I'm sorry to use the words, sometimes the dumb, mindless entertainment becomes the ruling factor. Then in that kind of milieu, to carve a niche for cerebral entertainment or cerebral communication is a challenge. In fact, when you talk of challenges in our country, we have seen other kinds of challenges also, because when people, in fact, it is happening right now in COVID situation, that when people are ASHA workers, there was a report that ASHA workers are going to people to tell them what to do or what not to do, and sometimes they are being attacked. And I can't help but be reminded of the instance of Mr. Narendra Dabholkar, who was heading the Andhra Shraddha Nirmulan Samiti, and people were so unhappy with him that he was attacked and killed. So, I mean, that was, of course, an extreme thing. So, basically, I would say that, but it has happened through the ages. Scientists have, at various points in history and various people, we all know.
Yes. I think that the true science, actually, we are focusing on the science that is generated in laboratory and how it can percolate
Yeah,
deeper into
but
the
but
society. Although there are social concerns, so I think, as I said, if you have the more scientific deeper people, it can be overcome. Now we
one
have another
challenge.
question,
The,
Koshendra Verma, who says same as training course in science journalism. Likewise, is there any course on science filmmaking? Dr. Mike, would you like to respond?
साथ तो चले गए ना साथ वो आपने
Any course on science video making, science filmmaking?
I think Mike is on mute.
I remember because his voice is not coming. I remember there was one course in CDEC in Trivandrum. They were offering science filmmaking program, and subsequently in Ahmedabad SEC, DECU started some program on science video making, and it's a very emerging area. And I think we must take lead in science filmmaking, as was suggested that a small film, a 5-minute film, a 2-minute film, 3-minute film. I think that is the need of the hour, and definitely we would like to have that. And we have some other questions. What is the humor in science cartoons? Somebody is asking about science cartoons. Dinesh Kumar ji?
Very famous scientist, Dr. P.K. Srivastava, was a senior scientist at CDRI, and I was the first person who included the scientune in our syllabus in mass communication. And since then, it becomes very famous and very popular, and it can be used to popularize the science, and it can be used to make the science simplified. This is one of the best methods. So, if anybody want to learn, it is also part of syllabus in science communication, and video making is also part of the syllabus in science communication in my university.
Okay,
So
very good. Okay, sir. There is another question by Preeti Sagar. During this pandemic situation, I have utilized this time to read scientific facts about the situation, but did not found any platform to discuss. Please guide us where we can support through our knowledge, from where they can get more knowledge.
About what?
Yeah, Shukla ji.
Actually, she says that she has studied. Now she wants to communicate. I think that is the question. I mean, please guide us where we can support through our knowledge. So I think the avenues we mentioned, for instance, the public service broadcasters, All India Radio and Doordarshan, the community radio stations, the publications, all these are there. Now we shall need to know more which area are you from, but wherever you are from, any one of the All India radio stations will be in your vicinity, in your city or in the area close by. So you can approach the people with your idea that this is what you want to say about the situation. And I think our doors are always open. I mean, I'm no longer in All India Radio, but still from force of habit, I'm saying ours. But basically, public service broadcasters are for everybody. One thing I would like to add here, Dr. Pateria, because when I have started speaking about the earlier question also, actually we also need to have a kind of specialization in science writing. I mean that is a stage which we shall be reaching. मिसाल के तौर पर जो बच्चों के लिए विज्ञान का लेखन होगा वो एक अलग ढंग का होगा. कैच देम यंग जैसे स्टाइल होती है. I remember that at the station I was working, I was given women's program, and when I was given women's program, I said I shall start a series घर आंगन में विज्ञान. And people said कि women, because the women's, there was a stereotype, about the women's program, कि उसमें सास बहू की बातें, व्यंजन विधियां, रिश्ते नाते, all those things, पर्व त्योहार. I said no. I think because women are using science in a big way, science and technology. So many gadgets are there, so many things are there, and their children are there. Women are educated; they are helping their children. So I think what I mean basically wanted to say was that you need to have science writers and science communicators for children, for young, for maybe for adolescents, for young people, for farmers, for industrial workers, for different kinds of. So you might be needing a kind of an army of super specialized people also. But to reach that stage, we first need to have that that environment where science communication becomes the in thing.
Yes, good. Let me say to our audience, to the participants, because we are only taking some representative questions. It is not that some question we have picked up. Only there are many questions maybe resembling. So we are taking only representative questions. So that can be answered for many of them. One, Ananya Verma, she asks how to develop scientific temperament.
I have a point on the last question as well, and probably can connect here. See,
So you mean this should be the last question?
Sorry?
You mean this should be the last question?
No, I said I want to add something onto the last question. Okay. So onto those platforms.
Yes, please carry on.
Sure. So the question about the platform to discuss what she has learned and understood, I think blogging and social media are the two places to start with from nowhere. And that's where you can build the community of the people, the type of people you really want to connect with. And that's the easiest thing. Not only what we learn and we process, it's very important to validate it as well before broadcasting it or before taking it to the masses level. Because what we understood and how accurate our understanding is and how nicely we have validated is the critical step. And that's where you have to seek more input from the peers before taking it to the broader level. And the last point onto the question where you talk about the scientific temperament, I think this is just about learn to ask questions. Scientific temperament is nothing, but you can just simply start being curious and have your curiosity about why something is happening. And that's where you start getting into more logical mindset and automatically get into the space of where you take things more, I would say, objectively and try to get there rational and logical.
Thank you. One Elena Alex, she asks that how to attract school children, maybe through science communication, through science exhibition competitions, etc., rather than get to them to college level. So how to attract children? I think this is the question by Elena Alex. Dr. Mike? Okay, I think Mike is not audible. So maybe...
Yeah. Okay.
Now it is coming. Yeah. Please.
Yeah. I think the best thing, I think Rashmi switched me off. I think the best thing is for schools, especially to get a nature book.
Yes.
And take the children out. A scrapbook where you pick up leaves, you pick up twigs, you pick up flowers, you look at the insects, dead ones if you see, or real ones, and learn, for example, about chlorophyll. What happens when sunlight falls on a piece of a leaf, for example, decomposition, water. I think from the basic things, life support systems around us, flowers, how they pollinate, these are all science, and how seeds form. So I think a nature book created by your school or by you could be a walk in nature to discover the wonders of nature around you. Because we are all related, we're all concerned about the food that comes, the grass that the cow eats, which becomes milk, that is science. And the flower that pollinates and becomes a fruit, to the basics, where how water falls and why water is important, where does rain come from. So I think that's where interest will begin. A temperament could become, a temperament could take birth. And if you start them, and there will be out of 30 or 40 children, 10 who are really interested, who are passionate about what they hear, and they can draw these things. You can collect leaves. For example, if there are trees, 10 types of different trees, collect the dead trees and paste them. What do they do? What is the significance of the plant? Its medicinal values. What does it do? Why have trees? How we are connected, how our lives are connected to the trees, to the existence. So, I mean, right? It's not just about oxygen and evaporation and filtration of water and the fruits that they bear. There's a bigger science behind that. They can learn that later on. But in the earlier stages, to keep it as simple as possible, whether it's an apple tree or whether it's a plum tree or whatever. And I think that's where how you begin with a nature book. drawing and giving marks, inspiring and motivating them while they're young. Catch them while they're young.
Thank you, sir.
That's
I
the
think
secret
before
lies.
Rashmi goes for muting all of us, we have to conclude. And before concluding, let me take the last question. Really, someone asks that is very pertinent question. Devika Kuru. She asks if we want to write about a scientist's work, can we use his or her published paper and make it simpler? I think Diksha.
So I think yes, definitely you can pick up any research article available in public domain. There are a lot of open access articles which are available for everyone. They have different type of licensing. So typically to cover a popular science story, you don't need any particular permission, but it's always a good idea to inform the authors and share, because oftentimes they are the first source of information where you can validate the things and also get a little bit more information. And for the subscription paper, I think it's important for you get an access either through an institute or like your own account. So pretty much anything in published space, you give the reference and credit to that paper. I think it's perfectly fine to write a story about it.
So
you
thank you very
don't
much.
necessarily have your own research. You can write about others' research as well as you understand, but you have to give a reference from where you got this.
So thank you
Doctor,
very much.
Doctor, before we close, I will just like to. Somebody asked, how do we unlearn the language? Somebody had asked this question that there is a language of scientific jargon and technical terms. How do we unlearn when we go into the scientific communication
Yes,
thing?
yes, very
So
important. Yes.
I thought I shall just talk about my experience. And well, in radio and in television, there is something which we call spoken word. Spoken word basically means the language as it is spoken. And it is heard, not as it is written and read. Now, a lot of radio and television broadcasting, we use written scripts. So the challenge then is how to write that it becomes like a spoken word script. So there are certain cues for that. Not going into the technicalities of all those things. Two or three very simple things are short sentences, not very long-winded sentences, short sentences, many short sentences which can, I mean, for instance, if I have a very long, compound, complex sentence, it's better that I break it into short sentences. The words also, again, not very heavy words which can be easily see. आसान का मतलब, सरल का मतलब सतही नहीं है. It doesn't mean simple, doesn't mean shallow. So the information doesn't have to be dumbed down. The information can be there, but it has to be very interesting. And one last thing I would say is, which works in radio also, again, that suppose you want to begin to learn how to write for radio, maybe one of the techniques is that you speak as you write. You know, just say, for instance, you dictate and somebody is writing. So when you are speaking and writing, then the element of spoken language automatically comes into it. With practice, then you can become proficient and do it without, I mean, that exercise. So basically, the idea is that it's a simpler language, better communication skills, and which can be, I mean, done, which can be learned over a period of time, but one can always start doing it. And scientific language, for instance, acceleration. Now, acceleration is a term, but it has to be explained. To give you another example, I was doing the commentary from Wimbledon during London Olympics, and in the tennis commentary there is a word called ace. Ace is a service winner which is not even touched by the opponent. So suddenly I thought that how many of my listeners would understand the term ace. So I thought I should explain what ace means. So basically that is what could be done when you are using a scientific or technical term which is irreplaceable, which has to be used. Then maybe it can be explained in simple words and you can move on. So people will then know, okay, what that is what it means. And that is how they will go along with you.
So thank you very much indeed, all the very elite panelists and fellow participants. It's really a matter of great enlightenment for all of us for talking together, putting our thoughts across, and what we call the pollination of ideas, cross-pollination of ideas that gives birth to new knowledge, new ideas, and new developments. One or two points just occur to me. it also reminds me that as a matter of ceremony, as a process, every Nobel laureate, whosoever gets the Nobel Prize, as part of the award of Nobel Prize, he or she has to deliver a popular lecture. So that is mandatory to even Nobel laureates. So see how science communication has been given a lot of significance even in Nobel awards. Similarly, it comes to me why only AWSAR platform is available. But can it be a regular practice, mandatory, not mandatory, maybe popular practice or our self-voluntary practice? Whosoever does PhD, so as part of their award of PhD program, they have to deliver a popular talk as what they did, and that is going to change the society, change the world in a way they perceive in the future. That is one. Number two, as I said in the beginning, in science communication, two are the major players. One, the scientist, the other is the journalist. Most of the time, what happens, as many of us have experienced over the period, that scientists generally feel this is the job of a communicator, this is the job of a journalist to communicate science. At the same time, most of the journalists, they come from the humanities background. So they find it difficult when it comes to science communication, although there are exceptions. So there is a need of bringing them together. And as I said, that two in one, if that comes a reality, especially through the programs of AWSAR, I think it becomes very, very important and very, very useful. And the last point, as we have been discussing the opportunities in science communication, many of you have given wonderful ideas, especially in the form of we have to have at least one science communication professional in every laboratory. And most of the laboratories in CSIR, they are having that kind of division or system, be it in the form of science information, science publication, science dissemination, or science communication, or science publication. So similarly, it has to be followed in various other scientific departments and scientific institutions and laboratories. Similarly, mass media, as Dr. Shukla ji has suggested, that All India Radio has a long legacy, a long tradition of science communication through All India Radio, so as Doordarshan. So all these people, they require scientifically trained people who have a flair in communication, like science officers. There was a group of science officers who were really heading these science cells spread all around the country. Now, a couple of them are still working, but that is also required to be strengthened. Similarly, nowadays, international sector is coming up in a big way. It also reminds me that number of students trained as MSc in science communication, they have been absorbed in various such organizations. Then corporate sector also offers number of such avenues. Then civil society, that is also yet another employment providing system that is available at international level as well as the national and regional level as well. Apart from that, many international organizations, they are offering fellowships, scholarships, and in the AWSAR, we are also offering these awards. So now avenues are coming to the fore. It is the turn for the youngsters, and the vision of the experienced and the energy and new vision of the youngsters, if it can merge, I think we can harness this potential for really strengthening the science communication effort in this country. So with these words, I really thank all the organizers, all the panelists, and all the participants for joining us and giving me this opportunity, or conducting the program in very systematic and smooth manner. Now over to Rashmi. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your insightful collation of the gist of the entire panel discussion. Now, I would request Dr. Bharat Bhushan, who has been the man behind the show, to present the vote of thanks. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. I, on the behalf of Vigyan Prasar and NCSTC DST, and from the entire team of AWSAR, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to DST Secretary Professor Ashutosh Sharma sir, Dr. Manoj Pateria, Dr. Nakul Parasar, and our district. I want to state that we are most grateful to all our speakers who guided us for the opportunities in science and technology communication. We thank you, sir, for being with us this evening. And it was a great pleasure. Thank you very much. And it was a great pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Rashmi, can we have a photo if all of you come on the screen?
Sir, we have already taken that.
Okay.
एक minute.
Just
These are called
we'll take
screenshot.
Yeah. Nakulji, yes. रश्मि थैंक्स फॉर शंख के लिए धन्यवाद So
बहुत धन्यवाद.
thank you Nakul ji and all the Vigyan Prasar team, NCSTC team and all the friends in Parliament.
बधाई भी
Thank
स्वीकार
you.
कीजिए. Congratulations are very meaningful program.
Thanks a lot.